Have you all done any research around even this idea of healthy leadership or unhealthy leadership, and how does that impact the levels of trust that folks have in the church, in ministry?
We have done quite a bit of work on that, and in some ways, I actually think you could look at just the body of work our company has produced. Starting with George Barna, and then continuing with me and with our team. That in some ways, the projects that we've been able to focus on, a project called "You Lost Me," which was the loss of faith. A lot of people misunderstood the data, or have had sort of this idea that people walk away from faith, and it's still a huge problem. 22% of young people who grow up in Christian faith actually lose their faith entirely. That's actually double what it was. It was 11% back in 2011. So I think that the algorithms and the what I call digital Babylon have made it more difficult for us to disciple. But still, there's a huge number of people that lapse in faith. They call themselves Christian, but they're not very active. And so that book really focused and tried to shine a light on some of the challenges of discipleship. Another project called Unchristian focused on the negative perceptions of the church. I think another project that I did with Gabe Lyons called Good Faith was a focus on, what happens when Christianity is viewed as irrelevant and extreme. And in each of these cases, it's not, we live in a complicated society, and the church is not always perceived in a friendly manner. But a lot of the challenges that I think the church has today, whether it's the lack of discipleship or the lack of an effective public witness, or, the loss of faith among young people, I think are failures of leadership and unhealthy leadership, and an inability to sort of measure the most important things that ought to matter. And so we sit, I think, at an interesting crossroads for the Christian community in general. We're referring, obviously to local churches, but also to the parachurch organizations and other entities that support into, sort of the faith ecosystem and the Christian space. And I think it's a really exciting time, because I think there's opportunities for really great and transcendent and humble leadership to emerge.
Yes.
And I think we're seeing signs of that, signs of life all over the place. But in the midst of that, we have to be able to take a good hard look at some of the things that haven't worked. And the fact that young people who are science-minded, for example, that are growing up, who want careers in science, technology, engineering, and math, have almost no discipleship opportunities in local churches. I mean, that's a real failure of leadership in my mind. And it ends up, showing, I think, in the data, as we end up losing many of those young people who are interested in those kinds of careers, what I call sort of a vocational discipleship mindset. So, I think our job is always to shine a light on these things and try to ask and inspire the church to be a better version of itself. And, sometimes we're characterized as sort of looking only at the bad news. That's not certainly our heart. Our heart is to try to point out what those areas where we can grow, where we can do it better, where we can find, I think, a more faithful way.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel for more finance, governance, and fundraising news and insights for your church or ministry.